Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cyrus Webb Presents. I'm your host, Cyrus Webb. So glad you guys could join us today. For those tuning in on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and on X, we're glad you all could join us. Going to connect with our friends over on Instagram so they can be a part of our conversation. And then last but certainly not least, we're going to connect with our friends over on Amazon. We'll introduce our next guest. If you guys are just now following us on our journey, make sure you guys do check out the description on the platform you guys are joining us on. And we're now live on Amazon Live for Cyrus Webb Presents. Glad you all could join us for this conversation. And type you guys a quick welcome message over on Amazon. If you guys are new to us, make sure you guys do hit that follow button either here in this corner or down below. You also will see the book by our next guest. I'm so excited to welcome playwright and author Cynthia Moore to our broadcast. Cynthia's book is called Dancing on COALS. The subtitle is A Memoir of an Overachiever, something I think all of us can be able to relate to. We're going to talk to Cynthia not only about the writing of the book, but also sharing her own journey and what it's been like for her to see the connection that readers are making with it. Cynthia, thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Cyrus.
Look, the pleasure's definitely all mine. I enjoyed this book as someone I think who also is probably a self-described overachiever as well. Cynthia, I think a lot of people can relate to this. What has that been like for you? Let's start the conversation there. To be able to write and share something that is so personal, but to see how universal it is with the readers of the book.
That's right. I wrote this book with something in mind because it occurred to me that when you write a book or when you present yourself, you want people to think the best of you. You want to look as good as you possibly can. And I wrote this book with a little bit of a different intention because I thought, what if I didn't try to look so good? What if I bared all my flaws and my foibles and my missteps and made fun of them and made them funny? And so that was my intention as I wrote the book. So I wrote it from the point of view of an overperformer, someone who overdoes, overachieves, overstruggles, and overworks.
Yeah. I think it's so interesting that you said that. It immediately made me think as you were talking about chapter 6 of the book. And it kind of goes into something I felt very personally myself. You talked about it in the chapter, Cynthia, about women, what's expected of women. I remember growing up and, people telling me I was going to go to college and be a lawyer. Never asked me if I wanted to be a lawyer, by the way. I was going to get married and have this family. And I thought to myself, well, how is it that you all are seeing all of that? And that's not the world that I kind of see for myself. What was it like for you to think about perception, but also your own reality and decisions, Cynthia?
Well, perception was a tricky one for me because, as I write in the book, I was mostly performing in all male theater companies in a very high octane, highly athletic, highly acrobatic form of theater in the 1970s and 80s. And because it was all male, I was trying to fit in. I was trying to belong to the boys' clubs. And that was going to be my way to acceptance and belonging. I was desperately seeking belonging. And that was my way of trying to find it. And so as a result of that, I sacrificed some of my integrity as a woman and some of my own inner landscape of sensibility, creativity, intuition, some of the more female qualities that I had disavowed in myself, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So I was perceived as being one of the guys. I was acclaimed as being one of the guys, but there was a cost to me.
Yeah. I love the fact that there are people, even in the blurbs I read, even before I read the book, talking about having the chance to work with you in these different, I call them in my world, Cynthia, the different playgrounds that I'm in, because all of it is fun for me, even though it is work. But to be able to put on different hats. What was it like for you to see how people who may have known you in one realm now have kind of embraced you in this new realm, a published author, and being able to share a story like this?
It's quite a different realm. It's when we were in the theater, we were not doing deep internal self-exposing, self-revelatory work. And so when I quit the theater and became a therapist, I started becoming much more interested in self-divulgence and self-revelation and self-discovery. And so I think it's a little shocking to some of my theater friends that I'm exposing myself to such a degree. But it's who I am, and I'm not embarrassed about it. I'm glad I was able to do it.
You talk about, again, as you were talking, I thought about chapter 15, Mutation Blues,
Mm.
where you talked about in that particular scene about being able to see the joy, what you called in the book, the pure joyful abandon of
Mm.
12-year-olds who were on stage enjoying their craft. And what I thought about when I got to that part of the book, honestly, Cynthia, is how as children, right, we really think we can do it all, right?
Mm.
We're encouraged in so many ways. That doesn't always happen as we get older. Talk to us about what that memory was like for you, to think about that joy that those individuals felt, and how we sometimes can lose that even when we're doing what supposedly we love or think we're meant to do.
Mm. There's such a delight in children in being able to excel at something if you
Yeah.
give them the tools to excel.
Mhm.
You know, when I was young, I used to take ballet, and I came from a very dysfunctional, chaotic family, a lot of alcoholism in the family. And so ballet gave me this opportunity to be perfect or to excel or to be very precise. And I loved it. And so when I worked with kids for 25 years or so, I wrote plays for them and I gave them very specific acting jobs. I wrote characters for them specifically. And so they did what they were good at.
Yeah.
And I made them shine and they loved it. And they were so happy and delighted to be able to participate in these performances that it made me happy as well. It was just a treat.
Mhm. I want to give some shout outs for our audience, Cynthia. I see you guys over on YouTube. Appreciate the hearts over there. Appreciate the hearts and love over on Amazon too. On Instagram, hello to you, Kim Sunrise Sunset. I love that name. Says Dancing on Coals is an awesome book. I agree with you, Kim. Hello to you, Robert Marshall. Good to be able to see you as well. Tev Shots, hello to you. Glad you could be with us as well. If you guys have any questions or comments for Cynthia, make sure you guys put those in the chat as well. See you guys. Oh, I'm sorry. See you guys over there on Facebook too. If you guys have any questions or comments for Cynthia, put those in the chat. So now here you are sharing this book with complete strangers like myself, Cynthia. You and I
Mm.
have not talked before today, but people like myself will feel such a connection with you through your story. Was that part of what you hope would happen, or was part of this more your own healing kind of put on the page?
It was my healing put on the page, and, you know, I had to really work at the first editor I showed it to, I said, "Here's a copy of my memoir," and she told me, "You have to be more vulnerable. You have to open your heart a little bit and let people in," because in the first draft, I was not that vulnerable, and
Right.
so it took me some years to say, "What actually does that mean, and how do you do that? How do you actually open your heart and let people see your suffering without, you know, woe is me and the little
Right.
violin? And how do you pull that off?" And so I tried to combine really exposing my vulnerability with humor so that people could see that it wasn't an indulgent place of feeling sorry for myself, but rather something I could laugh at and learn from and offer up as an offering to the readers.
Yeah. I want to read something, if you don't mind, Cynthia, as you were talking just then. And this is why I tell people I always like to read the books ahead of time, because a lot of times in conversations, you never know where things will flow. But in chapter 19 of the book, The Art of Flying, when I was asking you about your own healing, you also talked about the work that you do in therapy, and it kind of connects to what you were just saying. I want to read this because I thought this was really interesting what you said about the why for you at this point. You said, "This is why I'm a therapist. I get to listen to stories all day long. I never know what the story will be or how it will end. I sit in my therapist chair like a child at her grandmother's knee, breathless as I wait for the unraveling of my client's personal trajectory through a flea-bitten life of disappointment and heartbreak, a story no writer could invent." And then you say this: "If I didn't have stories, life would be too hard." Did you always know in some part? And for myself, my I didn't realize this. I started hosting the show at 28. I
Mm.
didn't know 28, 22 years ago that I didn't know growing up. I used to ask people, have a notebook. I used to ask questions. My cousins told me I used to go around interviewing them. So I've always loved people's stories. Is it always just a part of who you've been?
Absolutely. I wrote my first book when I was 6.
Hmm.
It had stories and poems and songs and even a couple of prayers.
Wow.
It was my salvation. It was my escape. It was a way to deal with the trauma of the childhood where I could actually go to another world and books I read voraciously. I
Mhm.
think I think the only thing I couldn't live without is books,
Yeah,
stories.
yeah. I feel that same way too. And staying with that passage, though, that I just shared from the book, Cynthia, I want to talk about the gift you're now able to give. Because I think for all of us, our gifts and talents show up in different ways.
Mm,
And what I've learned in my life at this point is that my gift is not even for me. What has it been like for you to use your gift for others? Not only what you've been able to do when it comes to stage, but now what you're able to do as a therapist as well.
mm. Well, it's been so beautiful to be able to integrate the two and to be able to integrate my ability to express myself with my ability to listen.
Mm,
Because, as a performer, I could express. And as a therapist, I had to learn to receive and listen and attune very, very delicately to people. And so, in the process of writing the book, I was able to bring both of those skill sets. And it felt really integrating to be able to bring all of that, sort of my masculine self and my feminine self,
mhm,
my extroverted self, my externalized self, my internalized self, because I think what we're all looking for is balance, and to have a real balance between the ability to speak and to listen, to feel and to think, to be active and to be receptive.
mhm. How much of books, I know for me, even though I grew up in what I consider here in Mississippi, Cynthia, grew up in a pretty practical home, right?
Mm,
It was as quote unquote normal as you could expect. But I've always looked at books as not only an escape, but also as aspiration,
mm.
right? Of what's possible. How much of that in your childhood did books serve that purpose for you?
They were my salvation in the sense that what I loved was fairy tales.
Okay.
I read, I think I had all, remember those books? They had the Japanese fairy tales, Chinese fairy tales,
Yes.
Russian. I
Mhm.
had every single country of fairy tales, and I read all of them over and over again. And so the world of magic was really my escape hatch. It
Mhm.
was the world of fairies and magic and waving magic wands. And still to this day, I have a secret belief in the magical realms.
Mhm. Do you? I want to go to the subtitle of the book, there, a memoir of an overperformer, because I think for our audience that may be hearing that, Cynthia, I think when I initially was pitched the book, I think a lot of times people, like I mentioned earlier, will project their own things about us on us, and then there are the things that we recognize about ourselves. How much of that being an quote unquote overperformer was the projection because of the way you approach life versus the way you actually lived life for yourself?
I think I actually lived life that way because when I was very young, as I describe in the book, when I was 11, I was sent away to a boarding school in Switzerland where I didn't speak the language. I didn't know anyone. I was much younger. And I was so desperate for a feeling of home and a feeling of belonging that I catapulted my way out of that trauma into a world where I was going to prove myself. I was going to become somebody. I was going to get attention. I was going to be noticed. And so it was a reaction to trauma, if you will. It was a reaction to pain and suffering. And I lived that way for probably 35 years until I finally began to slow down and look inside and say, wait a minute, is this actually working to be an overperformer, to be going at life hell bent in this way? And it wasn't working. There was too much of a cost to it. So
Yeah.
I changed gears, literally changed gears, slowed down, and started to actually probably the biggest pivot was I started to practice Buddhist meditation,
Okay.
which gave me the ability to really slow down and quiet my mind and find some degree of inner peace, which is actually what I was looking for, although I didn't know it at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. You just answered, I think, what I was going to ask you about. I want to say hello to you, Goddaddy T. Hello to you. Good to be able to see you joining us overseas over there on Instagram. Because I thought about with your book, you have achieved with so many people. And one thing that's changed in my life, Cynthia, is my understanding and appreciation for what success is.
Mm,
And I've come to realize how relative it is based on our own selves personally, but also other people's ideas of us can also project that. How is your idea of what success looks like? How has that changed as you've gone through this evolution?
Good question. Dramatically, I would say my idea of success came from my father, who was an executive, corporate executive, and he was sort of an international executive that didn't pay a lot of attention to, especially me, since I was the youngest end of the family. I didn't get a lot of attention from him. So my idea of success came from, if I got famous enough or important enough, he would notice me. And now it's radically changed to, success to me is authenticity. And actually, I would say it's congruence between your insides and your outsides. If your insides match your outsides and you're whole and complete in any given moment and at peace in your heart, that is success.
Yeah. There's a great conversation as you were just answering that, Cynthia. I thought about in chapter 20 with Deb, where you were talking about the me's. I have those conversations too with my friends about the me's that kind of exist, and I love the way that you expressed it. You said the book is about knowing that this moment is enough, and yet everything I write is about how far I am from that. And I think it goes to how there are some who may see themselves, Cynthia, as overperformers, but some who will never see themselves as enough. Talk to us about that process of embracing yourself for who you are.
Mm. Beautiful. Yeah, that was the point. I kept thinking that I had to do enough. I had to do more.
Mm,
And finally, I came to realize that it wasn't about doing enough, it was about being enough, which is an internal felt sense of
yeah.
who we are. And I realized that it was all inside me. It was all a matter of how I relate to myself and
Mhm.
how we all relate to, how we speak to ourselves, how we listen to ourselves, whether we have compassion for ourselves, whether we accept ourselves as we are. And once we get that, life changes so dramatically from this place of striving to get enough, feel enough, be enough, have enough, do enough, to all of a sudden getting, it's just about recognizing that I am enough, just as I am.
Yeah. For you, that I'm curious because for me, that's a daily, it's a daily practice.
Amen.
Do you find that too, that it still is something you have to be intentional about daily?
Amen. Every day. Less and less. I would say less and less. I'm at the ripe old age of 73, so I think I've
Mm,
earned a little bit of peace.
mm,
And I would say that it's becoming far more the norm,
got you.
that I can come back to that place of that felt sense of I'm okay. I have a way to be in the world that is congruent, that is authentic, that feels like I have found my voice, I found my gift, I can deliver on that. So I'm not trying so hard.
Yeah, love that. And hopefully our audience will get there as well. Again, everyone, Cynthia Moore has been our guest. Great conversation with you, Cynthia. The book is Dancing on Coals, a memoir of an overperformer. It's out now here on Amazon. You guys can get it either in print or the Kindle edition. The Kindle edition you guys can get right now for 28% off. That's $12.99 for that. So make sure you guys do grab that book for yourself and let your friends know about it as well. Cynthia, really appreciate you spending some time with us. How can our audience stay connected with you?
My website is cynthiamorewrites.com, and my email is cynthiamorewrites at gmail.com.
Love it. Well, Cynthia, it goes without saying you're welcome back here anytime. I'd love to speak with you again.
Thank you, Cyrus.
More than welcome. I'm sorry, we have a comment came in from Facebook. Chris says, "An amazing life you have led, fame or for self or a life of altruism. Did you always know what the end goal looked like in each endeavor, or did the goalpost always move further and further that spark your need to overperform in order to achieve what the goal looked like in your mind?" I love that. Thank you so much for that. So that's a great question. So Chris is asking, did you always know what the end goal looked like in each endeavor, Cynthia, or did the goalpost always move further and further?
I think when you've got the wrong goalposts, they're always moving. right? When you think it's something that you can attain, they're always moving because you never have enough. But once you realize that there isn't really something to attain and that the goalpost is being here now in this moment and being at peace, they stop moving.
That's our friend Kim Wise. Kim says, fabulous. You both are. Love Cynthia's book. Thank you so much for the introduction, Kim. I appreciate that. Cynthia, I really did enjoy this. And like I said, looking forward to having you back again.
Thank you, Cyrus.
More than welcome. We thank you, our audience, for tuning in to another great segment of Cyrus Webb Presents. Until next time, you all make it a great one. We'll talk to you soon. Take care.